those who are in debt when they're young, outside of college debts, I don't understand how you can get there. All right. Unless you have a lavish lifestyle where you are going out, I don't know. I mean, you spend a bit too much time on the massage parlors, I like to jokingly say. Other than that, what are you doing? I mean, in Malaysia, our lifestyle is actually still pretty cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Before we begin the podcast, have you gotten your free ebook? It's called the Build a Six-Figure Portfolio Guidebook. Now, inside it, we share with you the tips and tricks to bring your stock investing skills to the next level. The best part, it's only 10 pages long and it's totally free. Whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, the link to download is in the description, or you can go to www.firl.co/free or www.firl.co/free. Welcome everybody to the FIRL podcast, best place for long-term stock investors. Now today we have a very interesting guest. He is a former corporate man at SAP. He's also a former entrepreneur, founded at least 2 companies, and is currently a full-time investor. Now, actually, John, I want to start off with this first, right? How do you meet our guest today, who, by the way, is Mr. Chang Yee Fong?
Yeah, so I had the pleasure of meeting him when we were at our previous company.
All right.
And we actually had the pleasure of him sharing his investment research methodologies to a group of fellow investors. And I interacted with him a lot during that time. I think it was December 2018, right? Was that, Chang?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere. And really valued his insights, his ways of looking at data sets.
Right.
And that's how I got to know him better, actually.
And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, for sure.
Yeah.
And so, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Chang Yee Fong.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you prefer a full name, Yufong Chang? Which do you prefer?
Anyone's fine me. Usually everybody calls me Chang.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Chang. Glad you could be here. Now, actually, I think the first thing I really want to dig into today is your experience in the corporate world and then transitioning into entrepreneurship. So maybe you can spell out to me what that process was like. What are some of the learnings that you've gotten out of that experience?
The corporate world, I frankly worked right out of military college. My first official job outside within the first 6 months was working with SAP Malaysia, and I worked there for about 8 years. And afterwards, I left SAP Malaysia in 2008, and then worked for 2 years as a SAP consultant independently with other companies. After that, I just didn't want to work in that field, and I went independent on my own.
I see.
So, what the question was?
Well, the transition, like, what was the motivations behind the transition, for example?
Into entrepreneurship.
Into
from
entrepreneurship.
SAP. Yeah.
Well, I guess the main reason is I just want to do things my way.
Right.
Comparatively, I don't want to deal with the corporate environment. It's its own animal. It's its own way of the people inside have their own way of handling people and their own styles. I worked in the what we call the tech support element field. I started off basically as an assistant, and then just worked all the way up to senior and management level on that field. But frankly, I was not I did well in it. Did very well, but I just didn't like it.
Right.
It was one of those where my idea of professionalism, if you got to do a job, you do it, fine. But whether long term I want to do this or want to find my own path in life, it was an easy answer. I wanted to go find my own path in life. What I wanted to do. I wanted my own independence from what these people were doing. I enjoyed my time in whatever field I worked in, even in SAP. and then I worked at Akakuana
Mm-hmm.
with their IT tech team also. I enjoyed those times. I just find myself just not enjoying the corporate need to follow their procedures and standards. Oftentimes, it annoyed me.
Okay.
I find the inefficiency and waste, which I understand is normal in the corporate world, is something I detest and loathe, because I came from a background where inefficiency and waste could harm people's lives.
I see.
Or could get people hurt. And just seeing that just being brushed off and and basically given a very cursory viewpoint by a lot of people was just I think for me was the small little flame that made me decide, no, this is not what I want.
I see.
Continue.
So then you transition into, before the podcast we were talking about this, you founded 2 businesses, right?
What I wanted to do, I thought I would do is I would try something new. First, I wanted to try events management. In this case, I thought something nobody has done in this country, which is game conventions, like what they have in America,
Like Marvel Con or something like that. Is it?
No, there's
No,
that's
that's
not,
Comic Con.
comics.
It's Comic Con, sorry.
yes, SDCC, San Diego Comic Con,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But for games, that would be things like Penny Arcade Expo or Gen Con in America. These are different things. They run tabletop games and also digital games and electronic games, and those are people come to play. They don't just come to just interact with the stars and play.
It's like card games and all these other things, right?
Because during my hobby during these times when during my free time when I was working in the corporate world was just any type of tabletop games.
I see.
And those things I use those as a kind of like it was my hobby.
Right.
It was I considered it as a very good type of hobby for me because it was one of those where I had social interaction with people, and at the same time it helped center me. It's a form of centering. It helped center me in stressful times.
Right.
I mean, as a joke, I say to my friends is that for Dungeons and Dragons, which is something I played since I was 8 years old.
D&D, yeah.
Yeah, I have the original books I bought.
Wow.
From Dungeons and Dragons, which is impressive as it is. But what I found impressive was I took those with me through several moves. I moved from America to Singapore, Singapore to Malaysia, Malaysia to back to America to God knows where I was deployed, and back to America, then to Malaysia. That was and taking those books from place to place to place. They're worn. They obviously look like they've been used, but to me they've been like. It was one of those where I kind of look at them and say, oh, well, in very bad times, they kept me centered. So I wanted to have that type of sense of community for people here in Malaysia, for gamers, because I knew the community existed. I wanted to try out to see if we can get them all to build some event where they could all come and just meet other people about it. The event I ran for itself, MagaCon, I ran it for 2 years. That was my first business outside of SAP. I wouldn't say it was a failure, but I did lose a lot of money on it. I think I spent about $500,000 amount of money on it. Total loss.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean the thing was like the conventions that were successful. We did have attendees and people did enjoy it and wanted to continue, and it grew. It's just that. Long-term wise, I had to take a look at my finances, and I was already married and my kids were already starting to. This was around the time when I had my second one that came out, and I was thinking, and my wife and I had a long talk and discussion about it. It boiled down to the whatever money I'll eventually theoretically earn from running the successful convention, it's going to take a long time,
right?
And in between. Am I going to risk my financial stability of my family and me for this event? So I had to finally just cut it out, accept the loss, and clear out close down the company, and then move into something that is a little bit less risky, but also still falls into what I thought would be my interest. In this case, still in the tabletop game community. So afterwards, I opened my own game store called Weirder Games and Hobbies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's located down, actually quite near the studio in Subang Jaya.
Okay.
Okay.
SS15.
Right. Okay.
So I ran that for 5 years. I did very well on it. I learned a lot of things.
What are some of the big ones, you would say?
Well, I learned about how inventory management is so key in how successful retail business chain is. Like knowing how to manage it correctly, knowing what is the turnover rate for not just the inventory as a whole, but for individual items, and then knowing that, keeping that in stock while at the same time keeping the capital in play, the amount of money that is, or what we call just
working capital.
No, not just working capital, but the relationship you have. Oh God, my brain went empty for a minute. When you have
suppliers,
it's your suppliers. You have to pay them within a certain date.
credit terms,
credit terms. The credit terms with your suppliers.
Right.
Working how to negotiate for better ones, how to work out those credit terms, and then understand how to use those to your advantage in regards to timing of your payments. And that was a very good lesson. That already I had done a lot of investment before that, but working, having my own store and understanding how inventory was such a big critical factor in my success has given me a perspective of when I look at companies and investing is also looking at assets and inventory ratios. I talked to a local investment, I wouldn't say guru, but he writes his own blog, putting recommendations. Choi Volk.
Oh,
Right.
Jonathan Choi.
Jonathan Choi. Yeah. Him and I, we had him and I in contact sometimes, and for me and him, it's we're both at a certain level of talk and discussion, and I enjoy my discussions with him because we're not talking at a lower level of investment. Where we're actually going like, okay, now we are talking about which ones do we consider more important in, say, the balance sheet. Like for me, I prioritize inventory control over cash flow control. This is one of those, it's a very minor point of difference between us, but at a high level, it's not that big of a deal, but it does, maybe it might mean the difference between one or us going into different directions when it comes to which stocks we both decide are good or bad.
So drive a little bit deeper and explain to us like of course you got that experience from running the company, but why is inventory management absolutely crucial for a business?
For me, I look at it as originally, before I ran my business, inventory turnover rate was to me one of those where you just look at it and go, okay, as long as it's healthy, it's within a reasonable turn rate, then the company will be doing well. But running my own business, then I started to realize that inventory turn rate, especially when it comes to industrial standards, tells you how much more efficient is the company compared to their competitors. Like one thing John Choi and I kind of discuss about is I gave him an example about, say, airlines. Airlines theoretically don't have inventory that much, but yet Southwest Airlines, which everybody now, at least for professional investors, look as the high watermark of
the gold standard,
the benchmark.
When to investing in airline companies or anything in that manner in the business, what is it that made them so good at their businesses? And one thing I like to bring up, Well, forever since the beginning, Southwest had one of the best inventory turnover rates for any of the airline companies. Theirs was 47 compared to industrial standards of, I think, barely 10.
Oh,
Yeah, that should already give you a hint that they knew how to do their business better. Maybe there was if you look at cash flow and stuff like that, that also points in that direction. But if you look at cash flow, turnover rate, cash flow turn rates, and then you look at inventory turn rates, and if you see both are healthy, if you see a higher inventory turn rate and say a much better inventory turn rate with nearly equal cash flow between, say, one company, company A compared to company B, let's just say both company A and B both have same cash flow turn rate, but inventory control turnover rate for company A is higher compared to inventory to company B, then it's one of those things that would trigger me to say, what is it about company A that they're doing better?
Yeah, it's sticking out, right? Like a sore
Yeah,
thumb.
why is it sticking out so much better? If they're using the same amount of cash and yet they're able to get more stuff turn around than their competitors, then what is it they're doing right? Or is it, what are they doing wrong? And if you then average out for an entire industry, then you can then you would find the more efficient ones. Obviously, some industries, inventory turnover rate is more critical than other industries, like say compares 7-Eleven to their competitors like
Family Mart.
Family Mart, My News. John Choi and I had discussed that, and and for me, I would look at, say, industry turn rates. What is the average for the industry first? And for these retail convenience stores, you shouldn't just look at, say, local within the industry.
Global.
You should look at global.
That's
What
right.
would be the inventory? And for me, one of the things I'm almost in agreement with him was he recently had a recommendation, I think, on his
blog. Right?
Yeah, on My News.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, we went in deeper in discussion because that's where that one went into our discussion on inventory turnover rate, and I asked him what was the turn rate for My News compared to, say,
Family Mart.
Family Mart or 7-Eleven. Right now, it's not so good, but the guy is working his butt off, and I say, well, when they hit a good inventory turn rate, then great. But what struck me about our local industry, at least in the retail convenience store sectors, is that 7-Eleven itself, I do not feel is doing very good, even though it is number one. Why? For me, the reason why I was looking at industry standards globally, inventory turnover rate for retail convenience stores is average out to 8, whereas 7-Eleven here in Malaysia is 6.
Yeah.
6 point something. And to me, that is like, they're less efficient here than globally. That to me shows that they're not doing the job so well. Maybe there's lots of excuses, there's lots of reasons, but I kind of feel like this is one of those where this seems to me indication that they're just I think the best word is coasting through. They're just coasting on the wave.
Chugging along.
They're just coasting on the wave.
Right.
They're not really doing anything innovative. They're not doing anything. They're just doing what everybody told them the rest of the company, everybody else is doing, except maybe better. They use their name for, they use the fact that, we're 7-Eleven, we got this much capital advantages, we got all this to basically
Branding.
to give them the benefits that give them good inventory. But maybe the management isn't negotiating as well with the local, they're not negotiating as hard, or they're not managing their inventory as strictly as they should compared to the rest globally. Like say somewhere in Japan, or say when they got better competitors in Korea, or even like say Australia, all these other areas where they're much more competitive and and they have a much more. They manage the inventory better. So that would be a criteria. That's I would say one of the criteria that I've learned through the years that I would, on a personal level, I would select as as something that would make me go, okay, that would be an interesting point that would trigger me to go deeper into research into a company.
I see.
Right. Okay. So going back to your this company that you were selling, correct me if I'm wrong, was it to do with toys and games? Is that right? The
Yeah,
second one?
miniature war games. Warhammer 40,000 was our main product line. Games Workshop products.
I think our editor used to play that, right? Game. Warhammer 40K. So why is it that you decided to cash out of the business? Because you did mention previously before the podcast that
you sold off the business.
Yeah, what was the reason? Since it seems like you were enjoying it, it was profitable. Why is that the case?
My third son was born.
Okay,
I see.
And my wife and I are not the type that really, we're not comfortable with maids in our house.
I see.
We want to raise our children. I'm too Americanized, I think, when it comes to how you should raise your children. And to me, the idea of raising children with a servant or a helper is, I don't feel that is I'm doing my job as a parent if I let them do that.
Right.
So and the other thing was, it made money, but compared to how much I earned investing, compared to how much I earned just working, the number of hours I spent working in the store and how much money that's coming in, it was a no-brainer.
I see.
I could spend more hours doing my research and investing and make more money there than the same number of hours I did in the store. The store was doing great. We were getting an average of about 30 to 40% growth on average on sales every year. And then later on, after sales growth, what I learned was inventory control helped reduce my sales. That's one. But meaning my total sales was down.
Okay.
Right.
But my profit had skyrocketed to 50% because I had managed my inventory better.
I see. Holding costs and everything else.
Yeah, because what I learned to do was I had learned to make it so that I didn't have too much inventory on the store while at the same time maintaining the reputation that we had everything we needed on the store.
I see.
We had because at that point I realized, using market research and trending and understanding where it went, I then realized how much I need to have of each product on the shelf exactly, instead of just going on a throw everything, buy everything, and buy 5 of everything. Now I can say, now knowing what is my average sales and what is the turnover rate of each, it wasn't just, I didn't just calculate a broad turnover rate. I learned, okay, this product I sold on average 3 a month.
Okay.
Or every quarter I would sell about 4 of them. So since I make an order every month, do I need to keep 5 in the store? If I had a whale come into the store and say he needed 10 of those, what I could then those rare whales, it could be what I've learned to do is also in the relationship category with other stores is what I would do is I can contact them and say, okay, I'll buy those extra units of this item out of you guys, or trade for this, or work something out. Having that relationship allowed it so that I could fulfill the contract, then at the same time maintain just enough inventory without extra cost.
I see. Was there any product obsolescence in things that you sell? There was no...
Yeah, what we had was paints.
I see.
Those did dry up after so many years.
I see.
But that wasn't an issue because the paints was and glue was one of those with a very, what we call ancillary products, like how AirAsia has their own ancillary products. In those instances, the turnover rate for the ancillary products was very high.
I see.
Especially on certain colors. We knew certain colors would go very fast, so we didn't need to keep that much. We knew which one to stock up and which ones wouldn't. So we we knew what was the right amount.
I see.
Generally close. We got close.
Okay.
Not perfect, but but more than that, then we learned ways to also work out and mark down on inventory. Like when we run events, we would just give away paints as prize. Those paints would just, hey, you guys,
sense.
the ones that were already kind of going into we would include the paints that were already coming close to obsolescence or just coming close to their drying age, like those who's been in the shelf for 2 years. Then we include that with paints that were obviously in demand.
I see.
Put them together into one pile and just give them away as prize. And then my supplier, what Games Workshop as a supplier has a what they call promotional inventory level or promotional things that you can mark down from your inventory.
Okay.
So what we did was then we just marked those off as promotional items or gifts or prize items, and then just get our money back for those.
Sorry to interrupt this podcast. I know it's a little bit annoying, but I want to tell you something that I think can be really helpful to you. I can tell you're really interested in the stock market and want to learn more about it so that you actually know what you're doing, especially when today things are getting more complex and complicated. That's why we came up with the Stock Investing Blueprint, or SIB. It's our signature e-learning program that teaches you how to pick the right stocks most of the time, buy and sell it at the best possible time, and manage your stock portfolio systematically. It currently has more than 10 hours of content and it's growing. You'll also be part of a group of like-minded investors that can help speed up your learning process. To hop on the program, click on the link in the description or go to learn.firl.co/courses/SIB.
I see. I'm actually very curious, being the technical guy. How did you manage all this? Was it because of your SAP background, did you write a customized software to do inventory management, or you just worked it out of Excel? Yeah.
I worked it out of a
Wow.
spreadsheet. I just used spreadsheet.
Wow.
I mean,
Okay.
we had a lot of products, but there was a lot of days where I'm sitting around the store, especially during the afternoons when we open, when our major customers don't come in until maybe after office hours.
I see.
So what am I going to do during the time? Well, I'm not going to sit around just, surfing for porn on the internet. So
All right.
Yeah.
So I think you've given us a very good glimpse of an aspect of your the way you look at investing. So maybe you can paint a picture for me. What is your investing philosophy?
know the business, know the industry is really the deepest philosophy I can give to people. I mean, I like the research. I like going into details about a company and business, and I like going, if I can, just a deep dive. When I was younger, I realized my grades, looking back, I was one of those students that if I had an interest in the topic or a subject, I would have the highest marks. If I didn't, my parents could not beat me enough to make me do the homework.
Yeah.
And I realized that also with my children. So thank God I had my own personal example to learn that, so I don't try to just throw that at them.
I see.
Right.
I do understand you appreciate history a lot. Is that correct?
Yeah, history is one subject that has always interested me a lot. I studied as much as I could, as deeply into it, as many areas. It is dangerous because there's so many rabbit holes
That's
to
right.
go into when it comes to history on many areas and subjects. But it is one of those where if you can understand the broader details, you can also understand the broader terms.
So what's one rabbit hole you're looking down right now?
Gambling, actually.
Oh yeah, I remember he spoke it on Ku's
Right.
podcast about gambling.
Yeah, I've been learning about the community advantage play community, as they call themselves, the professional gamblers.
Right.
But one thing I found interesting from that rabbit hole is what you can then, as an investor for gambling, what you could then learn to give you an advantage in research was you can easily find out how well is, say, a company, a casino is doing on a weekly basis.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very easy, at least in America and UK, especially in America, because America gambling casinos whatever, any type of gambling system outside of the Indian reservation casinos have to follow the state regulations, which comes from Las Vegas, which are almost all a copy of the Las Vegas, Nevada regulations, gambling license codes.
Okay.
And one of their codes is that any gambling casinos have to basically give a report on a weekly.
Oh, so they have to
basis.
disclose.
And it's public disclosure, it's public record that you can find in the state's gambling commission's websites or in their state's government website.
Wow.
Yeah, so like say Resort World Catskills and Resort World New York, which are the two biggest ones for Genting in New York. You just go to New York Gov website and you can easily get a PDF copy of their latest weekly of how much they're making, how much they have to make. And by law, they have to basically put those the reports in a level that's simple enough that general public can understand.
Wow.
So it cannot be, they throw in, say, 40 market units of sales or something like crap.
Yeah.
Something to hide their numbers. This is actually, no, they have to say, well, we went through this much turnover on slot machines.
Wow.
And
so
this much
even,
on tabletop game.
even
on table
baccarat to roulette.
Those fall in the tabletop games
I see.
category. Slot machines are video game, VGT, or like a video game technology or something. I don't remember what is the exact term off the top of my head, but you will know how much they're making out of slot machines,
Wow.
how much they have to give out, pay out. Because by law, the video slot machines have to have a certain payout. They cannot go below a certain payout ratio.
I see.
Like 80% total internal or 90% or something like that.
Is it because the legislation is requiring them to disclose more for taxation purposes and that's why the disclosure is so, in a way, transparent?
I think that is a big contributing factor, that they have to disclose how much they are earning. And yeah, because one of the excuses all casinos go around when they go to state governments is that, well, we give you more taxes, so let us open a casino.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would think that is that does contribute to the fact that they have to basically
Open
put
the
all
books.
this, keep their books open. And so if you get, so literally you can know how much Genting is at least getting from from all their at least US, UK, and even I think that's the majority of their casinos.
Yeah.
Outside of Genting, and that would be what, 75, 80, I don't know, 60% of their total revenue.
I don't think they do this kind of disclosure for the Malaysian operations now, do they?
I have not really sat down and studied how the Malaysian gambling codes are. It would not surprise me if it is very outdated and very there isn't anything really specific, and there might not even be any for taxation purposes.
I see. Yeah.
And because, well, there's only one.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. I remember Genting, Lim Ko Tong, and Genting opened up kind of really early when our country was still.
That's right. Yeah.
Very at the birth of our country's independence. So it's probably, you're talking about easily about 50, 60 years ago.
So we're looking at, I think in Genting's case, at least the casino in Genting, you would not have the same amount of details. Whether the government should be implementing this type of policy or not, that's not for me to decide.
Of course. Sure.
But I don't know if this policy exists. It would not surprise me if there isn't no such policy because of the fact that Genting is grandfathered and they're not going to open any other type of gaming license outside of lottery in Malaysia.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned about understanding the business as the cornerstone, right, of your investing philosophy. Was it something that you knew from the beginning, or something that you had to learn yourself, made a few mistakes along the way, and then you're like, understanding business is really important?
It was from the very beginning. It was the Peter Lynch's method. I already said in the previous podcast or the YouTube video I did with Chuang was that I've always, my first book was Peter Lynch's book, which was Study the Business.
Right.
And that's never been, I never changed from that. I don't read up on all these other numbers that the Wall Street financial
Right.
news, fintech. I don't read those as much as I would study the business.
So, I mean, the book came out, I believe, in the 70s or the 80s.
One
80s.
after 80s.
90s, 90s,
90s.
89.
99 is it? The first one?
89 was the first book.
Right.
Okay.
Or 80s. It was in the 80s,
Right.
late 80s. It was after the Wall Street crash of 87.
87, right,
Yeah.
okay.
It was after the Wall Street crash, but not too long afterwards.
So it's been a while since then. Would you still recommend people to read it?
Yeah. Why not?
So what are the top 3 reasons why is it that book is so important to you and for everyone else?
Yeah.
People keep telling me that the investment world has changed. There's all these others. Yes, I'm sure on a daily level,
Mm-hmm.
your the stock will go up and down based on all sorts of reasons, technical reasons. And if people want to, they get excited. They want to make money when it's up and then make money when it's down.
Right.
But long-term wise, 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, even 2 years, when you're the stock will eventually hit a price, and that's based on its business. That has almost been.
It's a law. It's almost a law, would you
It's
say?
almost the closest thing you have to an actual reality of the business of investment. That eventually the business, once you understand it, will do well, and if it does well, the stock price will go up. But in between, stock prices will fluctuate immensely. There will be a massive variance due to how the Wall Street, the financial world is now structured, and the fact that we have all this technology integration. People need to feel a need to have a constant update of these things and constantly make money during the fluctuation. So we have a different investment style and philosophy that is totally opposite of what I had already learned. And frankly, that law, which is business will either do well or not based on many factors, their management, what type of business they're in, how well they run their business, how well they are doing their themselves. That has not changed from 40 years ago. That's how Warren Buffett ran things. That's how Benjamin Graham looked at it.
Yep.
That's 100 years now, I think.
Yeah.
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 So
having invested for more than a decade, right? Or 2 decades. More than a decade, 2 decades.
30 years now. I started when I was almost 30 years. I started when I was 15.
Right.
I read the book when I was around 13, 14 years old.
What was your first stock? Do you remember?
Yeah, do you
I
still remember your first
recommended my
investment?
first stock to my mother was True Tech in 1996, 97. I can't remember. It was around there.
Right before the
Financial crisis.
crisis. Oh wow.
Yeah, so my mom lost about $40,000,
Right.
40,000 ringgit on my own recommendation, which sucked. But True Tech was, for me, an example of me reading all these like PE ratios, technical analysis techniques, and then using that to base my investment off of those, and not understanding his business, which was not very strong at the time. And so I frankly deserve to have that loss. It hurt that it was my mother. I mean, maybe it was good that my mother was my mother, so she didn't like come in like other people. If you invest other people's money, they'll come back at you. You lost me money and stuff like that type
Right,
situation. But it was an eye opener for me that this is not the way to invest. That this book that my father provided for me is the path I should be following when it comes to invest, and it has never changed.
I see. How would you recommend people to improve their skills of understanding businesses? Because that literally, I was hearing a podcast. They're saying that I think there's close to 2,000 books written on Buffett, right? And everybody's like throwing
Buffett
out.
only gave one investment advice.
Yeah.
He's given out lots of investment advice, but he's only given out one advice on what subject to learn in regards to investment. Do you guys know what it is?
Enlighten us.
he
History?
just said accounting.
Oh, okay.
Learn accounting
Mm.
because that is the language of the business.
Mm.
Right.
That is where you understand how the money moves and flows inside the business and how the business accounts and tells it what it is.
Mm.
Accounting is understanding where those numbers are.
Okay.
Forget all the, too many times nowadays, the companies, when they come out their annual report, the books are just thick,
Yeah.
massive,
Yeah.
and frankly, I don't like reading it.
Have you seen the latest integrated reporting kind of standards? It's even more fluff, actually.
Yeah, and I don't study it. I go back to just going back to the original top 4 balance sheets, profit and loss, cash flow statements,
Mm.
and then maybe I'll read the notes.
The notes are very important. Yeah.
Those I'll read, and maybe occasionally I'll read I would do keyword searches if I'm finding something in the industry, like in Dufu's case.
Mm-hmm.
I did a keyword search on there when I opened it on my computer. I did a keyword search looking for in this
Helium,
case,
right?
yeah, helium drives.
I was doing that as well. As remember, after you mentioned it, I was like, hey, let me check it out. And I think they only mentioned it, I think, a couple of times in the past 10 years, something like that. I think it was in 2015 or 2016.
Yes,
Just
and
that small little. It's just
yes, but they were the only ones that mentioned
right.
it compared to everybody else.
Correct.
That's right. Okay. So accounting, let's talk about it. So you mentioned earlier on, right, inventory turnover. That's something that you look at.
I mean, go back. Let's go back a bit because I did say accounting, as
Right.
in learn accounting.
Mm.
I took that advice to heart, and I actually took an accounting degree. I got an LCCI certification.
Oh, this was during your time at SAP or after that?
This is after.
I
This
see.
is during my free time, kind of like in between while I'm running my businesses. I also took a LCCI degree.
Did it help you immensely in your investing?
Yeah, it did. It helped me understand that how these guys account for the money.
I see.
What is money coming in? What do they do out? And it helps me understand. I didn't take an LCCI audit degree
Mhm.
or anything on auditing, but it did get me understanding where auditors would start looking
Mm.
and where those money came. Like what would be receipts?
I
and
see.
What are the things that they move to hide the money?
Okay.
Okay. So speaking of accounting, right, what are some of the things that you look at that you like to see first when you come into contact with these financial statements? So you mentioned earlier on a little bit about inventory turnover. If you can, the specific product turnover. So is there anything what other things do you look at when it comes to accounting?
Obviously, the usual cash flows.
Right.
P&Ls, and how close is that related to cash flows? Because P&L is the reason why the PE ratio, as you talked about, why it was originally popular in my experience was and grew out of favor with
Mhm.
investors
Right.
was too many companies then started doing little financial tricks
Yeah.
in the books to increase their PE ratio.
Especially because of accrual accounting as well, I guess.
There's a lot of things that comes into it, and that's where I find inventory management helps in understanding it. Because let's just take there was in America there was a case on donuts. What was the damn Krispy Kreme donuts?
Okay.
They was eventually investigated for fraud or something in financial reporting because they were basically upping their numbers before they sold.
Oh,
I think.
interesting.
And what they did is they basically, I can't remember. There was a YouTube video you can search about it on
Okay.
Krispy Kreme donuts history and financial something. There's somebody who did a report on it on the YouTube, and it boiled down to they would push the products or push the stuff to their retailer since it's a franchise.
Ah, okay.
They would push the thing straight to the franchisees just before the quarter's out.
Just to make the numbers look good.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then obviously the franchisees come back and stuff like that. So it makes their quarters and their years look good at the last minute. And if you have a good idea of inventory management and control, you could see that, the inventory turnover rate on that would represent that it was very low.
I see.
or maybe too high, or maybe too. It just seemed kind of quirky, especially.
What about businesses that don't actually like? I mean, companies like SaaS companies. How do you account for that if it's in absence of inventory? Actually,
Like what type of companies?
probably let's just say SaaS-based, cloud-based kind of companies. How would you,
They still have inventory.
in terms of storage space,
Yeah.
in terms of So in a way, is there any business that you've seen that does not have inventory and it's more difficult to evaluate?
I have yet to see a company. There might be some companies
Mhm.
that have something that is not inventory based. Even software based companies have some form of inventory in some way or another. But how, what, as I say, is inventory turnover or control is not. You can't do it in isolation. You have to do it in comparison to the rest of the industry.
Understand.
So if it's an industry, say a SaaS industry, then you look at all the inventory turnover rates for the whole industry and then get an average out from there. And then you see here's the average. Then what is the mean and variance and of it. And then look for those who have high variance from the mean and average. And then that will give you something to work with.
Understand.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what is one number or a metric, right, that it's not used popularly? So, I know inventory turnover is one, but what's another one in your experience that you find to be really useful, but it's not that mainstream?
HR. What I would like to do is employee retention rates.
And how do you do? And usually, I mean, in the US, you got companies like Glassdoor, right? But here in Malaysia, where would you scuttlebutt these sources of information for turnover rates, attrition rates?
Look at how much they're paying for HR when they go to how much on their cost. Look at how much they pay for their own staff.
I see.
And how much has it gone up or down? If it's actually steady and stable throughout the years with some steady growth, that actually means that the company is growing and has can retain their employees. And at the same time, I don't mind growing cost of HR.
Right.
As long as the company itself is generally growing in the right direction.
Okay.
What concerns me is companies that have very high turnover rates for their businesses on their HR, meaning you see a massive fluctuation in their employees' cost.
I see.
On the HR level, on their accounting form.
I see.
And those show to me a very chaotic situation in the business. Those tell me that, all right, the companies they're not retaining the staffing that needs the skills that they need to make their business efficient and well.
Right. Speaking of, now, this is a slightly more, I would say, a more advanced question that I, having read a few annual reports myself, I noticed as well. So speaking of HR, so typically they would put the employee salaries and all that after gross profit, right? So basically it's gross profit and then they will talk about it after that. And then that affects the operating profit usually. Some companies...
gross or net?
No, after
gross.
So you've got revenue.
So you got revenue, then you get cost of goods sold.
Yeah, that is net. And then gross is actually after all the other stuff, I thought.
No, it's revenue gross. And then you have your operating expenses and then operating and then taxes.
Because to me, because gross is a very specific, there's a very legal specific term for it because that companies like Hollywood businesses, accounting, that is one of those reasons why they end contracts when they get profit sharing. Just having the word net and gross can mean millions of dollars, how much they pay a certain writer or a certain contract to a certain star or to somebody. And if it's written down as net, then a lot of times the writers are...
shortchanged?
Yeah, if it's compared to gross.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm referring to Malaysian companies.
Okay, gross. Okay,
Right.
then we'll call it gross. Then.
Right. So sometimes what they do is, okay, so for a lot of companies, they'll put it under operating expenses. So the people.
Yeah.
So maybe some manufacturing companies for tech goods or whatever, they actually lump the salary of the people that they pay to manage maybe inventory or whatnot under cost of goods sold.
COGS. Yeah.
So in those cases, right, where they mix things up, what would your response be?
That's a good question for me. Those type of companies, it seems to me that sounds very funky. That's very funky. Unless there's a reason why the industry would have to do it, unless because the employees are contract based. It sounds to me that they are contract based. My guess is sounds to me like companies that would do that would be those who have a lot of cheap labor on contract staff, those who are foreign workers, like something like Top Glove.
Yeah.
That would be something they might do just to simplify their accounting.
I see.
But I disagree with doing something like that. And companies that do that makes me very
Uneasy.
I would not. It would be one of those that makes me uneasy to put in money in the company.
Understand. Yeah. What are the other scuttlebutt methods that we had discussions before this, Chang, and one that you enjoy was actually talking to people in the industry. How do you in a way incentivize? I don't know if that's the right word. Incentivize them to actually sit down and share this with you from your experience. Are there people that say no, Chang, I'm not. I don't know you. I don't want to discuss this. I don't want to disclose this. And what will be your success factors that help you get this kind of information actually?
Anybody who says I cannot talk about it or oh no, Chang, I'm not happy, it means that either they've got something hidden.
Okay.
That means they're doing fraud, or things aren't going so well in the company.
Okay.
Or they are either way. If they're very defensive about talking about their business and their company and how well is I'm not asking about how well they're doing. I'm asking about, so how do you do your business on a daily basis? What's happening right now? What do you guys do? Like how do you get from point A to point B? How does this thing get manufactured from here? What are the costs that goes into that item?
I see.
Like if they are very reluctant, unless outside of, if they're not I'm not asking for details. I try not to. I say you don't have to tell me how much it costs exactly, but you can. But say telling me like if it's a big part of the cost for say rubber gloves is the nitrile material cost, or in some gloves case would be like the cotton lining used for the gloves. I mean, the cost of each individual glove is so many variable factors that you just having the guy tell me, well, a large part of the cost is just say is not the rubber cost, but only rubber cost, say 30%.
Okay.
But my say the lining,
okay,
the glove liners, the fabric, and all that costs 50%. Well, that's already information.
Okay.
And if they don't want to just tell you that, or they don't need to tell me the details, just say a big card cost this. My glove.
Okay.
That already gives me already a good head start to go into finding out what's the price of cotton.
Okay. What would be in a way a balance of time for research, meaning desktop research, researching online, Googling, and versus talking to
on
people.
The ground stuff.
Yeah, on the ground. What would you say would be a good balance actually?
I don't have a good answer for that one.
Okay.
A lot of my research was literally just internet searches.
Okay.
Occasionally, but I do the social talking with people because I'm afraid of getting too deep into research into rabbit holes.
I see.
So it's not because I go into there's too much. I do too much. There's no balance. There's just I know that sometimes I can get too deep into a subject, and if I don't get myself outside of it by having human contact, I would not be a very good person.
Okay, understand.
So I don't have a perfect answer. Like the casino issue, the information I provided for you was literally, I didn't interview a single person.
I understand.
All this is literally just, you can just read it all up in the forum for gamblers. It's all public records,
Okay.
but
Do-
it's just you have to wade through a lot of information.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you subscribe to any like financial data or any newsletters that in a way gives you an edge, or everything that you have researched so far has always been public and free?
Outside of the previous companies you guys worked for, in this case, Equities Tracker, no.
All right.
Other than that, I don't need to. As I say, that industry now has diverged from my investment strategy, and because they do, it to me is one of those. I don't want to deal with their stuff. I maybe I'm missing out money.
Mm-hmm.
I might literally be missing out money. But maybe the difference is it might mean I might have become a billionaire today or not. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm not out to make so much money to be that level.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
So I think it's very encouraging for a lot of us and the listeners because there's a sense, especially in Malaysia, that to get ahead requires special information, insider information. And where you're coming from, having the success that you've had, it's basically information that everyone has had. And that gave me this idea that actually it's not really about the information, it's about the analysis. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, it's your ability to analyze the information that people have that is out there. Like just looking in the right direction or asking the right question. People will. It's always that's the silly story of the elephant. You know, 3 blind men touching the elephant. One thinks is a tree, the other thinks is a
Right.
snake, the other thinks is a I don't know whatever,
A rhinoceros. 'Cause
or
of
some
the
crap
tusk,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
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 So you don't. It's for me. I just feel like what if one of them had for me reading and doing the research makes it so that I'm the guy with the one eye
Mm-hmm.
in those blind guys looking the elephant.
So speaking of research, I think another in a way complaint or excuse I would call it that a lot of people make is that it takes up time and they don't know where to start and they don't want things to be aimless. They kind of want to be like, if I'm going to spend 2 hours, I better get something out of it. So what do you say to people who think and say things like that?
What is their interest first? What are they interested in? What is their hobbies? Start with their hobbies. What I think today is when people look at investment, one thing I like about Chang when I watched this stuff online was that he was telling there are many other forms of investment outside of just the stock market.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
There are many other things. So keeping an open mind is important. So if people like to collect coins,
Yeah.
isn't that an investment of a form already?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Collecting coins. What about people who I just like to game?
Yeah.
Like those who played into my game, the Warhammer 40,000. If people were looking into Warhammer 40,000 stuff, you could have, if you lived in England or say you were an investor, you could theoretically have just opened an account in the UK and bought Games Workshop stocks 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And you would have made, I think, 7 times or even 10 times or something. It's a lot of, it's not a small amount of money already from your return, because in the 7 years, the Games Workshop stock has gone up a lot.
Yeah.
In between that time and the fluctuation, you've gotten the dividends from it, which you can buy back more. The thing is that people are made to think that, I'm supposed to be doing this boring stuff. But when it should be, what am I doing that I enjoy? Like if you enjoy eating, then look at what the restaurants are doing well.
What oil are they using? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Look
What oil
at
are
companies like Calbee. or
Yeah.
Thailand.
Like if you go to companies with people who are gastronomic people, like
Right.
who like to go
Food
around eating,
lovers,
food
yeah.
lovers, foodies as the modern term is
That's
called.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I remember reading all these bloggers and now YouTubers and what they call themselves as influencers,
Right.
and all these foodies and influencers talking about, we went and ate at this restaurant, or we went and ate that restaurant. My thought was, okay, so did you think about which one you liked and their services were good?
Mm-hmm.
And then thought about which company that they work for?
Yeah.
Maybe you could invest in the restaurant yourself if it was a good restaurant.
Yeah.
Or the food was good.
Or the barbecue sauce was good.
Yeah, I mean, just little things like that. And just, or there's no, I don't know about excuses. I know that there are so many opportunities that have always been there that if you keep your eyes open, you can find it. Now, I know sometimes I think because I go into the weird rabbit holes, I sometimes go into areas that when I mention it to people, which I thought was a natural thing for me to say that, well, let's look into this area. I sometimes get blank-eyed stares from people. Which boils down to, huh? How could you just think and realize this when but to me, it just felt natural.
I see.
Let's go back to collecting coins.
Right.
Right now, I ask people, what are one of our biggest concerns right now in financial markets? I mean, it's an underlying concern, and you hear some people report it and talk about it. You see some financial YouTubers talk about it. There is a feeling of something is about to change. Not more than that, that all this printing of money is dangerous. Where are we going to go with that? All right. My thinking is that, all right, how do you defend yourself against this situation? How do you protect yourself? What is the research that you need to go into?
How do you hedge yourself, you mean?
How do you hedge yourself against hyperinflation? There's recorded history of that happening. What are the responses to protect yourself in hyperinflationary situations in different countries? We had the Weimar Republic of Germany. We have Venezuela right now.
Zimbabwe.
Yeah, and what do we as individuals? How do we protect ourselves in that situation? What can you do?
So what can we do?
What can we do?
Okay, I'll give you a suggestion. I read about it, and there are some people who have talked about this. A guy named John T. Reed, he has his own Facebook page. He sells his own retail, rental investment properties in America.
Okay.
Reviews and stuff like that. You can look him up if you want. But one of his advice was that his study was that one of the ways to protect yourself in hyperinflationary situation, studying the past histories of it, is that you're going to have to different currencies and having your money saved into different type of currencies and different type of different valuable items. So one of his recommendations is just basically park your money, some of your money. You don't need to park all of it, but some of it, if you have enough now, if you have some of it, park some of it in foreign currencies, so that when the time comes, you can at least use the foreign currencies to give you a decent living through the hyperinflationary period. Because one thing is true about all hyperinflationary situation right now: it never lasts. It's always a temporary situation before the governments finally clamp down and do something else to change it. Venezuela is a special case because the government isn't really interested in trying to make themselves better. They're barely trying to hold on to power. And even in those situations, about Venezuelans going deep into cryptocurrency.
Yes.
So that is already one of the things they're already thinking. They're investing into a different type of foreign currency. So crypto, foreign currencies like, say, Swiss francs, Singapore dollars, all that's one, or Japanese yen. I mean, these are one way. Another way is also putting some of your money into what they call species, which is commodity items. In this case, like usually gold and silver, but gold and silver are overpriced. But even though the price of gold and silver is already an indication that people are really distrustful of
the current fiat system.
Yes, the current fiat system.
Right. So you mentioned crypto, right? I want to get your thoughts on cryptocurrencies. What are your general thoughts about it?
Crypto was a situation where originally it was an answer without a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but as time wore on, it became the answer to an actual problem.
Mm.
And one of the big problem is a massive distrust of people to the institutions right now. I'm not just talking about financial institution. I'm just talking about all institutions of the world, from, say, government,
Mm-hmm.
federal institutions, to social institutions that have been implemented around the world. The underlying the data, as much as people like to look into and say it's not, the scale of distrust of all the institutions right now, from Wall Street, financial institutions, to governmental institutions, not just in America, but also say the global ones like the World Health Organization, all that.
UNHCR.
All these is a sign of underlying things similar to what happened pre-World War One. And so when you have that distrust, people will look for other means of something outside of that system.
I see.
And crypto was an answer to that. So hence you have why crypto now is getting up to a higher level of popularity. It's not because financial institutions themselves have gotten into it. It's because people just distrust them, period. Effing dot, And that's why so-called cryptocurrencies that are backed by government, like say the Chinese cryptos and Venezuela cryptos and all those, never do well.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand why crypto is popular, because they don't trust you.
They want a decentralized system in a way.
They want a decentralized.
So how about yourself? Where do you stand as
an investor?
as an investor?
It's just
into
among
crypto?
the many. I'm not that into crypto. I
Right.
mean, I am putting some money into it now, and it is exciting. But I use it as hedge
Mhm.
in
Right.
the situation. Just like there are other items that I use to hedge. Like when I say species, I'm saying metal.
Right.
Anything that's metal. So I collect a lot of the old coins.
I see. Is it very difficult to acquire them, especially in Malaysia, or do you have to?
No, I'm not talking about rare, valuable coins.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Just
I'm
normal.
talking about the normal ones that we
Oh.
have right now that's getting
the
circulating.
shillings and all that.
Yeah, our penny, our 10 cents. I'm taking the old coins.
Oh,
All the old
okay.
coins that are
when we were mentioning on Chuang's, I was like thinking, the
Some Caribbean.
some very
Screw
rare
that.
Ming Dynasty kind of coin.
I'm not talking about that. I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm just taking old coins from
Right.
the ones before they changed over to the new currencies.
I
All the old
see.
coins, because my research, if somebody wants to debate me on this, but my research is pretty accurate, is that the real dollar value of the metal on those coins are nearly 100% now.
That's interesting. And you're talking about the coins before the latest Malaysian coin
Yes, I
introduction.
mean all the old metal, which was nickel, copper coins.
Yeah.
If you count the value of copper and nickel, it is for 10 cents and 20 cents, 5 cents. It's up into 90%
Wow.
of its face value.
Chang, thank God. I have a big bunch of that, and
Keep it.
Yeah, I nearly went to the bank and changed it for notes. Actually, thanks to you, I'm gonna keep it.
Keep it because so that means is that if say market crashes, you can still use those to just trade.
I understand.
Because that's one of the ways people in the past traded.
Yeah,
They
barter.
trade based on barter, based on the metallic value of coins.
Yeah.
Right. So where do you? I have so many questions, right? But I think to start off, where do you see the current fiat system, right? Because at least from where I stand, I don't think that there's going to be all-out collapse. It's going to be more of a combination or some sort of merging with the crypto world to produce something
I
new.
don't know.
So you no clue,
I don't know.
right?
If you don't know,
Yeah.
which is where I am in,
Yeah.
there's no prediction of where it's gonna go.
Right.
If you don't know, the best thing you do is to have either a wide net
Right.
and also learn to live in a situation that you're not dependent on that system.
I see.
Right.
So
I think that's a very good advice.
I mean, just one of the books about wealth building, Millionaire Next Door, and that hasn't changed, is you learn to be defensive in your spending. You don't spend so much. I don't drive a expensive car. I mean, I have to drive a Toyota Estima because I have kids.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't drive any Mercedes
Or an Audi.
or Aston Martin. I'm not a car person.
Okay.
All right.
And so I live in a life where I don't have to spend that much. The most expensive item in my house, maybe the outside of my cars, is maybe some of the stuff I collect, the books. But even then, they're not expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't. And the jewels that I got as gifts for our family.
I see.
So you said that comes naturally to you. It's always been like that.
Thrifty lifestyle.
I think a thrifty lifestyle has been pretty natural for me. I don't need to. The most expensive I ever spent on a meal outside of my wedding dinner it was on an individual meal. It's never been more than a few hundred.
Okay.
For me and my wife. I mean, we're not the type that goes around. The most expensive, I think, was when we were dating.
Okay.
I went to,
Of course.
I think I took her to the Top Hat restaurant for Valentine's Day.
I see.
And that was the most expensive.
Yeah.
So what about people who don't have the inclinations that you have?
Yeah.
What would you say to them? Like, how would you give some advice?
Control yourself.
Actually, I wanted to tease out something, MJ, from him
Right.
related to your question. You know.
Right.
We had this conversation, Chang, and you were like, people were like complaining, hey, we don't have enough money, we don't get enough income. And remember, the conversion actually converged towards, hey, go work in Alaska or something. Remember that advice we were giving? Go find a job where you can get better income.
And you don't have to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So sorry.
Google.
My Google woke up. I don't know why it woke up.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
the point being is that I especially for people in the young who have no attachment category, I cannot think. Have those who are in debt when they're young outside of college debts. I don't understand how you can get there. All right. Unless you have a lavish lifestyle where you are going out, I don't know. I mean, you spend a bit too much time on the massage parlors, I like to jokingly say. Other than that, what are you doing? I mean, in Malaysia, our lifestyle is actually still pretty cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, you could for a guy who let's just say unattached guy or a girl, you get your first paycheck is what
3,000, 2,005.
Okay, let's just say worst case scenario. Those say who are working in labor. Let's say you work for Alam Flora or those. You're maybe,
on a daily wage or something.
yeah, and you're getting about 1,000 to 600, 1,000 to fine. How many of those are working, are living by themselves, have to pay for rent?
Most of them will be provided, I think,
By-
workers hostel accommodation.
So you don't have to pay rent.
Yeah.
All right. You got, so you have to spend it on food. How much is on food? How much are you given for food by these things? Not that much.
Yeah.
Actually, you don't have to pay for food that much.
Yeah.
So live off Maggie Mee or Indomie for a whole month and just put an egg inside. I mean, there's, you could save quite a lot. I think, frankly, if a person right out of college who has no debts, if you are not saving at least 10%, I would recommend you go further up to 50% of your monthly income. If it's a first job, if you're in early 20s, unattached, if you are not saving your money already and learning to save and learning to discipline yourself to save so early already, then you can't complain to me. You complaining to me is one of those where I just go like, if you're not willing to go this step,
Yeah.
to me it feels like you're not going to the step. If you have if you complain to me saying, my mom, I have to pay for my mom's medical bills, I have this and that, fine. Then maybe At that point, you should maybe talk to a financial consultant about working out some of your debts and bills so you can work it out, or talk to your boss about getting into ways to help you make your payments out, or whatever. I mean, I know it's heartless, but sometimes not paying for those bills.
I think what makes it particularly difficult for people, especially in their 20s, is peer pressure.
I've actually had this talk with one of my friends, because I personally feel, okay, one of the contributing factors is peer pressure, but the social pressures, yes.
You're right.
The other, I feel, is also our education system has kind of failed them.
Right.
They haven't taught them financial education. I mean, globally, one of the reasons why I feel that there just hasn't been enough good investment or people are not taught investment properly is there's never been any financial education in their classes. How to balance checkbooks, how to look at your finances, how to make sure you have enough. I mean, all these things are just it's such a critical skill, and yet we have I don't even want to rile on race and say ways we have moral classes. I'm like, well, we also have Chinese also teaching kids how to freaking the Chinese schools are teaching the kids certain other classes which I think are not useful either.
Right.
So it's not about race. It's about what do we want our children to do, survive?
Yeah.
Right.
What do we want them to grow up and learn? And having the ability to have at least a balanced financial, at least a background to at least handle their finances when they get out of going to schools or whatever, that should be something we need to have.
So let me present this situation, which I think is pretty common, especially in my age group. So let's say the guy or the gal knows how to do basic math, right? They know balancing your books, knowing what goes in, what comes out, saving rates and all that. But one complaint I hear, and this whether it's a complaint, I will leave it to you. But certainly for me, is what they say is, yeah, I get all that, but then I get pressure, for example, from my family to buy a house, which will eat up a huge portion of their savings, especially if you're going to take a huge, multiple six-figure loans on it.
Why are their parents telling them to? Why is their family giving them pressure to buy a house?
It's a good question, John. You want to answer this?
I mean, especially for people your age group, your certain wealth and group and stuff like that. I would think that this is not a situation of pressure, as in it's a situation of not being trained to think. Being told this is the way when you should be, okay, it should be, all right, mom, dad, this will bring me into this much debt. How am I going to pay for this? How are we going to get for this? You should be talking to those pressuring you this, all right, how will I pay for this out of my salary? Well, I'm willing to talk about this, but I need to figure this out. It's going to be my money that's going to be taken out. So they should be discussing it with their families about it. And if they can negotiate an amount saying, well, I can't afford for this with my salary right now. And I'm not going to, and I don't know how am I going to get my payments. And frankly, I want to save up some money also for investment. So mom, dad, or say auntie, uncle, what do you think I should do? Can we work it out? Can you pay for some of it? Or should I not pay for it? I mean, if they're still pressuring you and they say you got to get a house, or if they do it because they want you out to get some independence, and I can understand that.
Right.
They want you out of the house so they can gain some independence. Maybe it's maybe because they don't know how to communicate better.
Right.
They don't know how to communicate better. I mean, so they don't know how to say, well, they are not educated enough. Their parents are not educated enough to say, look, we know you need to build up some financial strength or have some financial pressure on yourself to get out, to have some stability, to have some independence. So you can't use us to rely on to make sure you get yourself into it. So maybe instead of saying, I don't want to buy a house, what you should do, how about I move out, mom, dad? I'll go take a student hostel for a year or something like that. I'll move in, I'll rent a student hostel for a few months, a year or stuff like that, and I'll pay my way. I'll come visit during the weekends. That's about it, you know. And now, especially if you got a job, why can't you? If you're getting paid with that $2,000-3,000, I mean, geez, that's twice what I started with. My starter salary.
Yeah.
And if you and student hostel, my understanding, the prices haven't really increased that much.
I think probably 150 to 200 a month. I think if you can, yeah.
I think a house in the PJ area for a room 160 square feet is about 400 ringgit.
400 ringgit.
Yeah, but what about? But why not? Why do you need to have that when you say your work is? If your work is in KL, why can't you stay in say outskirts that have a like Kalanaj, not Kalanaj, someplace near LRT,
Abangi.
Bangi,
In
those
Kajang,
areas,
yeah.
Those
As long as there's a public transport that gets you into the city.
that a reasonably stable public transport that you can get there, that you can rely on every day. Do it.
Yeah.
You're young. That is one of the things you're going to have to deal with when you're young.
Yeah.
Having to deal with public transports. I mean, if you do those things and you're complaining about that you have to ride, that you have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to ride the public transports. I can't. You're not getting much sympathy from me. I got up at 4:30 when I was working for SAP because I had morning duties and my morning shift was 6 in the morning.
Oh,
I volunteered for it because it would give me more money. It'd give me more higher promotional rating, and it also meant I can leave theoretically at 3:30 in the afternoon because I was doing what we call a transitional shift.
I see.
Because I have to take over from American shift.
Yeah.
But that was theory. The reality was 2 out of 3 days I was still late because I had meetings, trainings that I had to attend and stuff like that. But still, I volunteered for it so I could have those hours. And I got those benefits for those. You know, they provided for it, and it worked out for me in the end.
Yeah.
But so I could do that because I was in my early 20s doing that, and I could. And anybody who says I don't get enough sleep and work it out, figure it out. I know there are so many problems being told of about individuals nowadays that we all have to go through, that we're all dealing with depression, hormonal imbalance, this or that.
Instagram pressure and all that.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about social media. That's a different, that is a different type of poison in my opinion. But I just say to people, I understand what you think there are pressures, but some things you just have to learn to ignore. You just have to put aside and say, at this point in my life, I don't need to have this in my concern. I am doing it for myself to make myself financially more independent, stable, and also for my own personal health.
Yeah.
Everything else, you don't need to be successful. You just need to be in a path towards success. And the only way to do that for those who are young is hard work.
Yeah.
For every Bill Gates, there's about there's a million other people who worked their way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody hears about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the book Millionaire Next Door. And I think today there's a new book kind of like called Millionaire Every Day, I believe.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think 8 out of 10 people kind of started from the bottom, no inheritance, but millionaire. Yeah,
it's for every guy who says, "Oh, you could have inherited the money." I can tell you one example. There's what's his name? I think it was. I recently studied who was the biggest Vegas whale that ever existed. His name was, I think, Fong. I can't remember. He inherited millions. And he basically wasted it all away. About 300 million USD spent on just gambling in Vegas. And he's in his 50s and he, to me, he's an example of a warning, and my study of history told me one thing: no such thing as elite continually being elite. All right. Can you guys name me a company that's been around for over 150 years?
Not many. I think Coca-Cola, I think, is 118.
No, it's still less than that.
118, I think.
There's no company. Companies either learn to transition with the times or they don't. Technology does have its own disruption ability.
Right. Yeah.
Like the famous one is everybody talks about buggy whip makers going out of business, which was true. But other businesses that were involved with the carriage industries learned to adapt. So some, because like those who made the wheels and the ball bearings so that the wheels could be a very smooth drive on the wagons and stuff like that. Those companies adapted. Some of them continued and made money during the time when cars became popular.
That's right.
Have you heard of a Studebaker? That was a company that transitioned from ball bearing car wheel manufacturing into making their own cars, and they survived for 80 years as a car manufacturer.
So would you consider, I think, the Rockefeller empire to
Or
be,
even the Rothschilds empire?
I don't know about Rothschilds, but the Rockefeller empire to be one where, okay, I know it's technically, it's arguable, but they split into many different, you got your Exxons and Chevrons.
Yeah. And I know it's all owned by the Rockefellers,
Right.
and there's inherited wealth and everything.
Right.
Are the children still doing the business of their parents?
Right. Okay, so before we go back to investing, and I'm enjoying this conversation so far, just one more point about personal finance. So the book Millionaire Next Door and Everyday Millionaire and all these kind of things.
I mean, back to that point about the Rockefellers.
Right.
For every Rockefeller, there is Carnegie's. There's many other families
That's
that
right.
has already
That's right.
that lost their wealth.
Yeah.
The Medicis.
There's about, for every one that survived, 100 died.
That's right.
Yeah.
So no, you just can't rely on inherited wealth. It's your own ability to build that wealth.
Completely agree.
To get there.
So speaking of that way of looking at statistics, one of the criticisms of the book Millionaire Next Door is that, and I'm kind of on the fence of this, but one of the criticisms is of survivorship bias. That they're basically saying, okay, here are all these millionaires and here's what they did that they have in common. Therefore, what they did in common is good. But some of the critics would say that, well, we will have to measure those who did the same thing but are actually not millionaires, and what's the percentage of that. And then we can say, doing these things.
That's fine. Then then I will ask him is there another technique to wealth other than what these guys did? If this is the road to wealth and there are other roads and people went that road to become wealthy, like say in the Millionaire Next Door, the habits were thrifty, work their own business, and basically learn to invest their money, or at least save their money very well and put into areas that they could, and then they saved up and lived below their means. That was the real thing. That was the Millionaire Next Door thing, secret. Now, fine, that's the de facto way of making money, saving money and becoming a millionaire. Now, what is then the opposite of that? And how can you then make money from that style, which is overspending money, living way beyond your means, and then maybe theoretically getting massive amount of contracts. I mean, okay, fine. Name me people who have accomplished wealth that way. I can name one person off the top of my head. That's Joe Low. Right now, yes. Yeah, and he did basically overspend. And then he got major contracts and
another guy I could think of is also involved in this kind of WeWork. What's the guy's name?
Adam Newman. Right?
Adam Newman.
Basically, okay, maybe they used a lot of money to get themselves into influence and positions of power. That's fine. But how many of those people went that way, and how many other people who went that same route and did not make money that way.
Yeah.
How many of those? For every Jolo, I think you've heard of stories of all these other guys who partied all day and spent mom and dad's money to make more money, but really wasted it away partying all day, getting the influence that they never really used.
I think the number of success cases is way lower in those cases compared to.
That's why I'm just saying it's not a survivorship bias. That to me is like one of those arguments where they're just looking to find something negative, where it's not useful because. Scientifically, if you look at it from a logic point, is that you need to have an opposite viewpoint that of success that can then be used
to falsify
to then be used to as a comparison to this path.
Yeah.
Since we theoretically we can look at the opposite way, which is which instead of saving money, we overspend. Instead of being disciplined with our work, you just party all day. Fine. Is that really a conducive lifestyle? I mean, most people can, anybody, it's like saying conventional wisdom. Everybody will tell you, no, that's not gonna make you live. That's not gonna make you wealthy. That's not gonna give you financial stability.
Yeah.
That will make you turn you into that guy who gambled all his money away.
So, speaking of that, I know we're supposed to go to the investment portion, but I just have this one more question, which is that, do you think it's actually dangerous for someone to make a lot of money, like a lot of money in a short space of time? Because in theory, you're like, hey, he made a lot of money. His compounded annual growth rate is, I know, 1,000,000%, whatever it is, right? In the, 200 million in 2 years, for example. But do you think that there are actually psychological drawbacks to that sort of situation?
Yeah, there could be. It's not a perfect, it will always fail because one thing they've never faced failure.
Mm-hmm.
So when the time comes, they've never known what is the things they need to do to go around failure. Like I looked at it was my financial failure was my first business, the events management company.
Yeah.
$500,000. That's not chump change.
Yeah.
That hurt.
Yeah.
But then my next job, my next business, I didn't lose money because one thing I learned was, besides managing inventory, one thing I learned to do was grinding, which is every day, go in, do the work, grind out those hours, repeat, rinse and repeat, get the successful habit, grind it out. I found I enjoyed it.
How many hours were you spending on average in the store? And I want the listeners to hear this because a lot of people who come to us think that investments is just a ticket out of
first year. I spent an average of 12 hours plus, so maybe 14 hours on the store.
Okay.
And this is also when my wife is taking care of the kids. That was one of the other reasons why I sold the store, because I was just spending too much time.
Okay.
There, I mean, it was between family and store. Family came first for me.
Great choice.
Right. Look, I'm sure there are many more lessons on entrepreneurship, on personal finance, but we're going to go back to the investing question. I think this will be the last question, but it's a big question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking at these days? What are the industries? How are you positioning your portfolio, if you don't mind sharing, stocks you're looking at?
Frankly, I am more, it's whatever, as I say, interests me, whatever the research takes me, wherever that rabbit hole. In this case, gambling is a rabbit hole I went into. Do I think I will invest in Genting? Not really. Do I think there are other industries that I can put into? Tech, yeah, there's some tech interesting stuff. There are other people who, John Trival, I think is somebody I really highly recommend. He's still into the studying.
Actually, we're
trying to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, we know each other actually.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend him because, and also talk to Alvin and the guys at Equities Tracker, because these guys do the grinding of the work. I'm finding myself, what I found was at this point in my life, the money is good enough that I don't need to put so much effort into it. So I got bored and I'm doing other things in my life right now. So I'm more defensive, I guess.
I see.
on my portfolios, which is less risky, more dividends based.
Uh-huh.
But even then, I still park into what I know industries that are boring but don't that are still in that will still grow in its own path. Tech is always interesting. IT tech, if you know where it's going. The one where you did your dooful recommendation,
Yes.
they instantly some idiot in the forum in the YouTube pages was already saying that the hard disk drives are
Yeah.
losing
Oh, yeah.
industry, and I just went
No, even when I actually explained it in the video,
and the guy still said hard disk sucks. And I'm
Yeah.
like, God.
it's not as bad as our AirAsia one though.
Oh, yeah.
AirAsia one, they thought we were being paid by Tony, so yeah, that's that.
I will say this about AirAsia: it fluctuates, and because the price fluctuates so much throughout the decades,
Yeah.
you can make money by investing in the fluctuation.
Yeah.
I don't.
Embrace volatility as a friend.
I mean, Tony Fernandez is he is his own unique character. He has his own way of doing business.
yeah.
I just like Donald Trump. I don't like the guy. Tony Fernandez is not somebody I would ever really sit down and have a drink and talk about our subjects. He's a charismatic in his own way, but I don't want to live his lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like his lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I will never really want to be in his circle. Okay. If I have a talk with him, it's most likely due to something we might have a mutual investment, a business on.
Right.
Other than that, stay away from my daughter. That's what I would tell her.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, look, I've really enjoyed this, and but I think we have to, we gotta go somewhere, so we gotta cut the podcast a little bit short. Do you have any? What was to end the podcast? What is the biggest lesson that you learned now investing over 30 decades that you would like to impart to all of us?
Boring is good. The grinding, as I said.
The grind is good.
Which is go do your research one step at a time. Go through, read a few dozen portfolios or a few dozen
Annual reports.
Go through the businesses and study it. Study the industry and go pick the best. One theoretical way of investment, I guess, for if people want to do it, is pick one industry. Palm oil, oil and gas,
electronics, semiconductor,
or say
FMCG,
whatever.
Yeah.
Go look at all the companies in the industry
Right.
and look for the most efficient based on the numbers. Look for the ones that, and maybe find the one with the hidden value, like who has a management that is really hungry for success and are doing some things really new that's outside of the industry that will disrupt the industry, or look for the ones who have the most efficient processes in the industry that have management that are still actively working every day to be efficient. I mean, Southwest Airlines is an example of there was nothing, they didn't really do anything special.
Yeah.
Everybody looked at it and just say, oh, well, they were amazing. But I just kind of look at it, they didn't do anything special other than they just basically did a very good managing of their products and of their services. And they had a good culture of people working together. They had this company attitude. They didn't have any new special product. They didn't have any new technology. They didn't have anything other than just they were just better at doing their business than everybody else.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
And that one, so what if you just choose and pick one industry, try it out, look at it. AirAsia is one of those where it's one of those where it, by the numbers, it is arguably the best out of the airline industry right now we have in our country, which is not saying much, but it is still okay.
Yeah.
But this is not a recommendation for AirAsia.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is definitely not a recommendation for AirAsia. I'm just saying pick the best. That's one possible investment strategy you can do.
All right. So
Great.
there you hear it, guys. Pick an industry, grind, and then pick the best as an investment. Chang, it has been an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to having you back here again. And usually I'll ask the guests where they can find you, but since social media is a form of poison,
He's kind of
so it's
anti-social
fine.
media.
You cannot find
I
Chang.
don't want. If you want to contact me, I guess call these guys. They have my number.
Yeah. So thank you for being on the podcast, and guys, I hope you enjoyed this very illuminating podcast, and see you in the next one.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Okay.